chroeso I sgwrs artistiaid Gwyl y Ferch cynta ar gyfer Gwyl y Ferch 2020. Fe enw I Menna a fi ydy Cydlynydd CARN a diolch yn fawr iawn I chi am ymuno efo ni. So welcome and thank you all for joining us for our first artist talk for Gwyl y Ferch exhibition 2022 and our first talk for 2022 altogether. So I'm Menna and I'll be hosting tonight's talk, but thankfully I won't be talking too much. And we've got 4 speakers tonight, including Gwyl y Ferch, one of the organisers, Esme Livingston, and we've got all the artists that are participating tonight. We've got Evelyn, I keep on messing up her name, sorry, Wolstenholme, Eleri, Foxhall, and Jane Barraclough. So, fydda I ddim yn siarad lot, achos dwi'n dweud pethau'n anghywir, ond mae gen ni un o'r trefnwyr Gwyl y Ferch, Esme Livingston, yma'n ymuno efo ni, a mae gen ni 2 o'r artistiaid sy'n arddangos gyda ni, sef Evelyn Wolstenholme, Eleri Foxhall a Jane Barraclough. So, fel o'n i'n dweud cyn I ni gychwyn, mae croeso I chi o holi cwestiynau yn y neud sylwadau, a fyddwn ni'n dod at hynna ar ôl bob un o'r artistiaid sgwrsio. Ond fyddwn ni hefyd yn agor y llawr ar diwedd y sgwrs, so please, mae croeso chi wneud hynna ar lafar neu sgwennu nhw yn y box chat. So just to say that throughout the evening, you're more than welcome to ask questions and make statements, or if you want to start a conversation on any of the points that are raised, please do feel free to do that. You're more than welcome to do it out loud or do it in the chat box, and we will come to them after each presentation as well as at the end. Yeah, so it's basically mae Gwyl y Ferch, hwn di'r trydydd gwaith da ni wedi wneud Gwyl y Ferch efo genod Gwyl y Ferch, a da ni'n falch iawn bob blwyddyn mae o'n datblygu dydy Esme, mae o'n mynd o nerth I nerth mewn ffordd ac yn fwy o platfform I merched Cymru ac I artistiaid Cymru ac I barddonwyr Cymru a sgrifenwyr Cymru. Mae'n tyfu'n fwy ac yn fwy bob blwyddyn, a da ni'n falch iawn o gallu bod yn platfform ar gyfer hynny. A mae'n gret cael gweithio efo'r genod bob blwyddyn. Mae'n rhywbeth da ni'n eitha angerddol amdano fo'n CARN I roi llais I bobl sydd ddim yn cael gymaint o lais. So dwi'n mynd I flydro gormod amdano fo, ond mae'n wastad yn bleser ochr CARN a da ni'n enjoyo cael chi yna. So just to say that in English before I hand you over to Esme. So CARN, this is our 3rd time doing Gwyl y Ferch, and we did one in Barraclough, our old site, and then this is our 2nd one in this current site. But yeah, it's always been a pleasure to work with the girls, and it's been something that we've supported from the start, and it's something that we're quite passionate about in CARN, because it's given a platform to those that might not have as much of as choices and things like that. But I'm not going to go too much into what Gwyl y Ferch is about, because I'm going to let Esme say that, but it's always something that we have been supportive of, and it's great to see that it develops every year and gives more of a platform as it grows as well to artists, visual artists, writers, and so forth. So I'm going to hand the baton over to Esme to say a little bit about Gwyl y Ferch, please.
Diolch, Menna. So yeah, Gwyl y Ferch is a project that was kind of started in 2019. Essentially, Fiona and I asked ourselves, is there any platform out there? Why do we not see all of this work by all of the wonderful creative women that we know? We started looking for ways to just promote our friends. And all of a sudden we were like, no, I think we're going to have to do this ourselves. And we wouldn't be where we are without Menna having given us that first slot in CARN in 2019. From there, we've done now 3 successful ones with CARN, but we've also done one with Menna, and we obviously ran a bunch of online events during 2021. I think so far we've raised over £1,500 for local women's charities and a couple hundred for Mind as well. In total now, I think we've had over 200 contributors, so musicians, artists, filmmakers, writers, performers, anybody who's creative has put something in, and the support we've had for our work has been phenomenal. We didn't think when we started it in 2019 that the people would just take it on board and say, we're gonna just throw all of this at you and give us so much amazing work, give us so many platforms to run with it, and be so willing to get behind what we had to say. So it's been overwhelming, and we're so lucky to live in a part of the world that is so impressive when it comes to culture and art. We've got plenty of plans in the future. It's not going to go away anytime soon, but we're hoping to. We've got the film night on Tuesday in Pontio, and a poetry night hopefully at some point before the end of the exhibition. But that is essentially the project.
Yeah, it's a well deserved. All the I can't think of the words. All the support that you are getting, because you work so hard, and it is coming from both of you. That
there's no one else really.
You doing it voluntary, which is amazing, and also just shows that there are all these people that are taking part, that there is that need for it. So it's great job, and yeah, as I say, CARN are fully supportive of it. So well done you. Diolch, Esme. So cyn mynd dim pellach, nawn ni gychwyn efo'r sgwrs cynta gen Evelyn. So we're going to start with Evelyn, and yeah, as I said, if you've got any questions in the meantime, please do feel free to put them in the chat box. But otherwise, we'll wait until afterwards. So diolch yn fawr iawn. Hand you over to Eve.
Evening all, noswain dda pawb. I learned a little bit of Welsh, dusted up on it. I'm just going to quickly share my screen because I've got some bits to show you via that way. So just bear with me 2 seconds whilst I just bring that up. Okay. Oh, slight technical difficulty, sorry.
Don't worry, it always happens. As I say, I always mess up anyway, so don't worry.
There we go. It's just decided to log me out. There we go, right. There we go. All right, cool. Can everybody see that? Is that all right for everyone? Yeah. Lovely. So yeah, welcome. I'm Evelyn Wolstenholme, and I am based in Swansea. I'm currently doing my master's in fine art at Cardiff Metropolitan. So tonight I'm just going to take you through a little bit about where my practice is at the moment, with what's featured in the Gwyl y Ferch exhibition, and then sort of, a bit about where it's all encapsulated from, really. So first of all, I'm just going to take you through my artist statement, and that's just my manifesto of what I kind of do as a practicing artist. So at the core of my practice is a need for connection, opening up difficult conversations around experiences of grief and death, bringing about a deeper empathy and understanding within society. With a focus on materials and process, I create tactile works in plaster and in photography, predominantly, with found objects that explore ideas surrounding the caption of what remains, while expressing the physicality and emotionality of grief as a trauma on the body. My work is born out of my own personal experiences with death and in the family home, and how art is used as a vehicle to express the emotions held in the body when words fail us. Much like grief, there is no ending to my work. As we learn to live and grow with it, the thread of my work is never ending. So I'm going to take you back to when I first started my practice, really. This was post-graduation from Swansea, and really I actually took a bit of a break for about a year or two before making any more work, because actually at the beginning of all that I lost my dad. So one of the only things I had after graduating was my camera and the local area around me. Whilst I processed and dealt with quite a lot of heavy emotions, and working through it all, and through my own experiences. So I found myself going out on the headlands in Rhossili, down in the Gower, and just sounds quite weird when I say watching the behaviour of sheep in the wild. And it was this one particular moment where I watched a mother ewe who'd just given birth to a lamb, and she was headbutting her young away from her. And it was such a volatile reaction, and it was so weird to see. And because everyone sees springtime as quite lovely and fresh and new, and lots of lambs springing around, and then to see this reaction was something quite contrasting in terms of how we feel. And it was through sort of just going around, and I ended up going to St Fagans, which is the National Welsh Museum down here in Cardiff, and speaking to the farmers there. And it turns out that sheep suffer from postnatal depression, and it's something that was quite a surprise to me, but it sort of lined up. And I always try and explain it in a sense that I don't condone this at all, but that reaction of headbutting their young away was a true raw reaction of how someone was feeling and how they were dealing with those emotions. And I found quite a parallel towards what I was dealing with in terms of my own emotions, how I really just wanted to react, because within society, or within my own surrounding at that point, I had felt quite isolated, and that I wasn't able to share my grief or my experiences with death with many people around me. So I used my camera lens and I used my surroundings and captured just a couple of photos. This one in particular, and then this one was out on a farm in Hereford. And then this one, which is one of my more known pieces, that won first place at the Glenvivian Swansea Open back in 2019. And I really love this process of photography quite a lot because of the spontaneity of it and the frying out of the end of the reel. So what was great was these two shots I had planned in my head that they'd come out, and they were totally not okay in my head. But when I put them together, I was like, actually, these create a really great piece of work in terms of this fading out, this burning out, this stopping and starting. And it kind of, for me, translated into an idea of like, there's not a definitive line of start and stop. And there's sort of this fear factor within particularly these pieces as well, in terms of what is attached onto the end of the photo. This comes from a lot of people chatting to me about these pieces in particular, because the first one is unfortunately a lamb that had passed away on a friend's farm, and the other is actually just a lamb's tail that drops off, and there's nothing on the end, it's just a tail. So that's where this sort of all started, and I've been playing with that and playing with a lot of photography throughout the last couple of years. And then it came to post-pandemic, not really knowing where I was going to go with it, and my practice had come to a complete stop within because I couldn't get out and do things and travel or go anywhere, which is where I'm most inspired by. So I decided to take my MFA at Cardiff, which is where my practice is really starting to develop quite a bit more, which is where I'll take you now. So there's a really nice caption here that I thought sums up quite a lot of what I'm trying to talk about at the moment, which is death, however intractable, however marginalised by contemporary culture, remains central to that culture, certainly through traditions of painting, sculpture and the memorial, but also in the very necessity of making art, which for me really sums up what my practice is trying to do quite a bit. Sorry, I just lose track of my notes. What I've really worked upon is these feelings of this lack of empathy within society, that one of the things most guaranteed within life is death, but we don't talk about it, we don't open up, and we don't speak about it. A lot of the grieving and the mourning and people who have lost are isolated and shunned to the side. out of a lot of people's fears and discomfort in talking about something so great and something that is so definitive. So from this, I'm using quite a lot of my own experiences and looking through it with an anthropological lens. And I'm looking at how grieving has changed over time through different cultures. These overly poetic outpourings from Victorian women carrying their husbands' dead skulls in their baskets being totally acceptable, to then now not being able to speak about it or be open with it with the people around us. You know, and the way in which we grieve, so particularly at the moment, which is hopefully where I'll get onto in just a few slides, about how we embody people's characters and personalities into domestic objects, in order to continue that connection, and whether or not continuing the connection is a healthy way of living or unhealthy. Because in some of my research that I have been finding is a contradictory post in that Freud mentioned how the reactions and traits within the grieving and mourning are very similar to psychological conditions, and how we openly accept these conditions because it's grieving and mourning, when actually it could well be a form of psychosis. So I've really got this big weighing scale to really kind of unpack at the moment, which I know is probably a bit heavy for a Wednesday night. So I do apologise. But that's really where a lot of my work is being fueled and driven at the moment. So this is one of the first particular pieces that I made back earlier in September 2021 with plaster, and experimenting from the idea of the sheep and the postnatal and the natural world being transformed there into the grief side of things, and using that as a vehicle to express my inner feelings, and using autophenomenology, the study of phenomenons within humans, to express how I really felt. So played a lot with alginate and clay castings, with plaster castings, and then it doesn't show up on screen as well here, but it is painted in black 3.0, which is the knockoff brand of Anish Kapoor's Blackest Black. And when it's up on the wall there, it's this whole trick of the eye, whereas is it there, is it not, what's coming out of the wall? And for me, that was something that really transcribed into like that oscillating feeling of like grief being very present to then not on certain days, and you never sort of lose it at all. And then into this next piece was quite a bit of a experimentation using something called sublimation printing, which is great for photographs and fabric and this lightness. And actually what's quite interesting is, I don't know if Menna or Esme might recognise this because they've seen the work in Gwyl y Ferch, but the central part of this work is the actual piece that's in Gwyl y Ferch, so the metal print. These were created at exactly the same time. And, you know, there's again playing with this idea of distortion within photography and materials, and the oscillating feeling between the two, you know, quite floaty and quite tactile. So yeah, see what, oh yes, there we go. This is the piece that is from the centre, and this is the piece that's on show at Gwyl y Ferch in CARN. And it's something that's quite, again, this whole idea of distortion and photography, and I really wanted to enter it into CARN, Gwyl y Ferch with CARN, because CARN's a really great, sorry, I keep getting them mixed up. Gwyl y Ferch and CARN are great organisations, and Gwyl y Ferch being so female orientated, really just showcasing women, but not necessarily just women, but this strong essence of Welsh women as well, being based within CARN and up in North Wales, which is, I've got feel like I have a strong heritage to up in North Wales. So I'm a huge fan, which is why I really wanted to enter with these particular pieces. Quite delicate, quite small. So this is the size of about a 6x4 traditional photograph, really. And it captures the light, and it's this, you know, the image is actually lamb's wool stuck in some hay, and you know, it's really, you can't tell what it is, and it's this questioning that I'm really sort of grappling with my audience, And ideally for me, there are two people stood in front of my work. One person is dealing with grief and trauma. The other person has got a lack of this experience. And rather than a conversation happen between the work and one member, the conversation is to happen between the two people stood in front of it, and to really start getting this conversation of grief and death and loss more open, more empathetic, more understanding, and that fear factor to sort of be taken away. So more recently, again, this piece is also in Gwyl y Ferch, is a piece called Lessons from His Mantle, which is now where I start to look more into the embodiment of characters and personalities and real people being in objects. This particular piece was quite haphazard to create. I was in something called a test bed within Cardiff, which is where you could just throw ideas together and make these pieces of work. And this one came through just simply photocopying and documenting this particular object, which was my grandfather's 3 brass monkeys that sat on his mantelpiece, with a connection to that because I did lose my grandfather just before making the piece, and he is my dad's dad. So there's quite a sort of family line going through in this loss, and clearing things up and together, and documenting life and keeping hold of what you can. And again, this questioning of, is it healthy or is it not, to be doing this? And within this test bed, now taking it to where I'm working from, was a piece that I haven't quite titled yet. It was just an experimentation, and it's a performance piece. And I'm not a performance artist, so don't directly say it is. So it was a really great opportunity to sort of test these ideas out, and I just threw myself into it. And within the piece, I'll just click through because there's a really great little, just a couple of seconds video, hopefully it will play. There we go. So within the piece, you can see that I'm dragging my feet through carpet, and it can be quite haphazard. It can be quite methodical. It's sporadic. It's very considered though. And the link to it is this wearing down of carpet, this presence, this trace, this human life, as you go through your house, because one of the biggest things that stood out to ourselves when we went back into my grandfather's house after he passed was the threadbare carpet within his living room, where he'd been for the last 70 odd years, and the carpet had never changed, you know, and his presence was still there. It's like he'd never left. But then it really makes you consider your own presence and your own trace and what you're leaving behind, not only considering what other people are leaving behind. So this is something I'm sort of really starting to work with and look into, the form of like residue from performance, the tactile object, very much the domestic object, because as you can see, after this particular performance piece, the objects themselves were left in the hallway there for people to view and to see, and became quite a sculptural piece. And it changed every time the carpet moved, and my trace and my track was left behind in different ways and different forms. And it's something that I'm quite excited about moving on into now as I develop more and more ideas, hopefully, in this documentation of life. So yeah, and that, I think, leaves me with that. So don't know if Menna, I'm not sure if we want to ask questions now or later. So yeah.
So I forgot to unmute myself, so I started talking. Yeah, thank you very much. That was really, really interesting, and I'm sure everybody agrees. So yeah, more than happy to take questions now, if you're happy, Eve.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions or wants to say anything, otherwise you can mull over it and we'll ask them at the end. So yeah, we've just had a couple of comments, really, or one so far, from Mary saying, "Brilliant, Eve, so interesting." But yeah, I don't know if anybody has any questions, or if anybody wants to say something, you're more welcome to say it out loud or put it in the chat.
I do. I have a question. Eve, do you work primarily or with a mixture of digital or analog photography? Does that feed into what you try and say with a piece as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I primarily work in 35mm photography, so analog. I do obviously capture things in my own life digitally, but I think there's something quite different when it comes to 35mm capturing art, or with an artistic perspective there. Just because, you know, you really have to think about what you're taking. You haven't got thousands of shots, you've got 26, and prices go up and up and up by the month in terms of developing and buying film. So you really have to think about it and consider what it is that you're taking, which I think gives a different depth to the image that's actually being captured and then reprinted. So I think it definitely informs, and funnily enough, again, there's this whole big family link that comes through within my photography, because it's my dad's camera that I first picked up in a Pentax K1000, and you know, it was brilliant, and that's where I learned my photography skills. So that's why it sort of holds this real true effect. And there's just, with analog photography, there's so many different, the possibilities are endless. You can really try and be very experimental, or very neat at the same time. So I'm hoping that I can actually push that a little bit further into the likes of collodion prints, you know, taking it really right back to like the old tin types. Yeah.
Sounds really exciting, doesn't it? And it's really, like, yeah, obviously you just gave us a sort of snippet into your practice there, but it was all really, really fascinating. And yeah, talking about those taboo or things that people aren't comfortable talking about, basically. And it's great that you have that voice, and you know that you're doing it from a place where you've got experience, not just from an outside sort of perspective. But yeah, I don't know if you can see some of the comments that are coming up on the chat, Eve, but there's a lot of people saying how good and how much they've enjoyed it. So yeah, thank you everyone for your comments. Diolch pawb. So yeah, same thing. Really enjoyed your talk, especially performance piece. Amazing, well done, tackling the issues that everyone avoids. So interesting, Eve. Love hearing your passion too. And then we've got ones like bereavement is very messy, isn't it? And we often suppress or be silent. It's very brave to tackle it. Thank you, Alec. Car, hi Car. So she said, love your work, seems like a positive way of dealing with the grief. Very, very relevant to me, having to sort through my mum and dad's belongings in the next few months. Does the process help?
Yeah, I think that's how mine really started, was that I didn't really have like an outlet to, you know, like I say in my artist statement there, my manifesto, is that, you know, words do fail us when we're trying to really describe what we're feeling and processing it, and the art is a huge therapy in that for me, and that's where I really lent on it, because actually there's for my experience, there's very little help for grieving in terms of therapy and counselling. So I really sort of had to find my own way of dealing with it and tackling it. So I just, and my art is I don't know if you can tell, but art's my absolute passion. So I really grabbed that and just lent on it. And yeah, I'd say it definitely helps for sure. And it does help you confront it, I feel, in a more gentler way. And look into it at your own pace. Yeah,
Definitely. And it's definitely because obviously the visual arts is a language in itself, isn't it? It's a way of speaking about it without technically speaking about it in a way. Thank you. Yes, so Kaz also said that her first experience of 35mm was her dad's K1000 as well. And Alex says a language of loss in the making, really great to see. Yes, mourning is a task. Indeed, Alec. I don't know if anybody's got any more questions or any comments. Otherwise, thank you very much, Eve, and we might return to you at the end of it if we've got any questions for all three of you or anything along those lines. Diolch. Thank you. Iawn, diolch yn fawr pawb. So the next speaker we have is Eleri Wyn Foxhall, or Eleri Wyn, as she's known. So y person nesaf gen i'n sgwrsio ydy Eleri Wyn Foxhall, neu Eleri Wyn, fel mae'n cael ei nabod ar ei trwy chyfryngau lle. So mae hi fod 2 ddarn arall hefyd yn yr sioe. So mae yna ddarn bach, a mae yna ddarn bach yn fwy does. So mae nhw'n eithaf gwahanol, so mae yna un sy'n ddyrlliw ac un sydd yn fwy abstract. So Leri's got 2 pieces in the exhibition. So she's got one piece that is a watercolour and one piece that is a abstract acrylic. Am I right, Eleri? I'm trying to remember all these information. So I'm not going to say too much. Dwi'n mynd i drosodd i Eleri. I'm going to pass you over to Eleri. Diolch yn fawr.
Hello, I'll just try and share my screen. Right. Okay. Felly, dwi'n mynd i wneud y sgwrs yma chydig bach yn Gymraeg a chydig bach yn Saesneg. Dwi'n gobeithio bod hynna'n oce. Dwi'n bod yn neud siŵr bod pob yn gallu dallt. Felly, diolch yn fawr am y cyfle i gael siarad am yng ngwaith hyn yma. Felly, dwi'n reiddiol o Sir Fôn, ond dwi rwan yn byw yn Ngwynedd, jyst tu allan i Gaernarfon yn Penygroes. Dwi'n creu celf haniaethol, ond yn fwy diweddar dwi wedi bod yn arbrofi efo lot o technegau gwahanol. Coeliwch neu beidio pam o'n i yn yr ysgol yn fengach, do'n i ddim yn dda yn gwneud celf o gwbl, a wedyn nes i cael athrawes yn yr ysgol uwchradd, a nath hi wir yn ysbrydoli i efo gwaith celf, ac ers hynna dwi heb stopio creu. Yn enwedig oedd celf yn rhywbeth reit bwysig i mi yn ystod tyfu fyny yn yn harddegau. Ond ie, felly mae lot o'r peintiadau haniaethol dwi'n greu wedi cael ei ysbrydoli gan y harddwch o'n cwmpas ni yn Gwynedd a Môn. A dwi'n wrth fy modd yn arbrofi gyda gwiadau gwahanol, lliwiau. Mae yna lot o liw yn ngwaith i, a mae hynna jyst yn rhywbeth dwi yn wastad wedi bod yn cael yn hynny at lot o liwiau. A dwi'n meddwl yn wahanol iawn i'r gwaith o'n i'n creu yn 40au, oedd efo lot o angst a oedd yn reit dywyll i naws. Dwi'n meddwl fel dwi wedi tyfu fyny a bod yn oedolyn, mae'r gwrthwyneb wedi digwydd a mae yna lot fwy o liw yn ngwaith i. Felly, na i jyst sôn chydig bach am y darn yma. Felly, nath y darn yma cael ei ysbrydoli gan y prysurdeb yn y dre yng Nghanarfon, a y cyferbyniad rhwng y llonyddwch o edrych allan tuag at y borid. Dwi'n siŵr bod lot ohonon ni wedi bod ar wal yr Anglesey neu ar hyd y forid y fyna yn ystod yr haf, a pan mae'r haul yn taro a mae'r môr jyst yn llonydd, mae o jyst yn olygfa sydd yn dod â lot o ysbrydoliaeth i llawer ohonon ni, dwi'n siŵr. A felly dyna sut nath yr syniad o creu yr darn yma ddod at ei gilydd. A wedyn hwn oedd yr darn cyntaf nes i submitio i Gwyl y Ferch nôl yn 2019. A dwi'n cofio cael yr e-bost yn ôl yn deud bod yr cais wedi bod yn llwyddiannus, ac o'n i mor excited, cys dwi rioed wedi cael cyfle i wneud rhywbeth fel hyn o blaen. A mae o'n wneud rhywbeth i hyder rwy'n i gael cynnig i arddangos gwaith am y tro cyntaf. A wedyn yr ail ddarn nes i nôl yn 2020. Eto mae hwn yn ddarn haniaethol. A dwi'n mynd rili siŵr iawn be oedd y syniad tu ôl i'r darn yma. Mae'n darn reit fawr, mae'n A2 mewn seis. A nes i jyst dechrau creu, a ddoth y lliwiau yma allan, a wrth i fi beintio nes i sylwi bod yna fatha eto rhyw gwrthgyferbyniad rhwng y ddau ochr, a eich bod hynna'n lot i wneud efo sut oedd yn meddwl i ar y pryd, a o'n i'n teimlo fel bod yna rhyw trobwynt yn ngyrfa fi a trobwynt yn y mywyd i a lot o bethau mynd ymlaen. A dwi'n meddwl nath o jyst dod allan wrth i mi beintio. Weithiau dwi'n peintio, mae rhywbeth yn ysbrydoli fi, a weithiau dwi jyst yn peintio hefo emosiwn, jyst yn cael y teimladau na i gyd allan ar y canfas, a wedyn dadansoddi fo a sylweddoli wedyn be dwi wedi greu ar y canfas. A wedyn, eto symud ymlaen i 2020, oedd yn flwyddyn reit odd i ni gyd. O'n i'n feichiog ar y pryd, ac o'n i adra, ac o'n i'n gweithio adra, a nes i just meddwl, doedd o'n rili cyffyrddus i fi ista a creu peintiadau mawr, felly o'n i'n ista lawr a arbrofi mwy efo gwaith dyfrlliw, a hefyd gwaith mwy, yn lle bod o'n fwy abstract, mwy pethau real, a mae hein yn ddarna dyrlliw a mixed media, o'n i'n defnyddio beiro, pensilia, unrhyw beth, really. Ac eto, yn yr un flwyddyn, nes i cychwyn arbrofi gyda acrylic pour painting. Felly, nes i weld rhywun rhyw fideo ar YouTube yn neud acrylic pour painting, a oedd y canlyniad just yn amazing. Felly, nes i brynu lot o baint yr acrylic pour yma. Mae yna fatha rhyw cymysgedd o gemega sydd yn neud o'n mwy fluid. A wedyn nes i gychwyn arbrofi gyda lliwiau gwahanol a sut oeddwn ni yn tollti'r paent ar y canfas, a oedd yn really therapeutic actually. Dim yn poeni am be oedd y canlyniad yn mynd i fod, just yn enjoyo y broses o greu a just gallu emosiwn yn y broses yna. Felly, doedd hein really ddim yn ddarna dim byd o werth, really just pethau arbrofol. Ond nes i just really mwynhau i creu nhw ac arbrofi efo sut oedd y lliwiau yn cymysgu ac yn rhoi nhw ar ben ei gilydd. A hefyd creu yr cells yma yn nhw hefyd. Da chi'n gallu reid fel stwff silicon i fewn, a wedyn mae hwnna yn gwasgaru'r paent ac yn creu y cells mae fewn iddo fo, sydd yn gret. A hefyd, na i jyst sôn chydig bach, mae yna ffordd lle da chi'n gallu reid y paent i gyd mewn cwpan, a wedyn fflipio'r cwpan drosodd, a mae'n jyst yn gwasgaru i gyd. Ond hefyd, fedrwch chi chwythu'r paent, mae o'n rili diddorol sut mae'r darn i gyd yn cael ei dod at ei gilydd lle. A wedyn, dim yn siŵr iawn pan mae hwnna fyna, ond ie. Wedyn nes i fynd yn ôl at paent dyfrlliw wedyn, a dwi wastad wedi bod efo rhyw fascination amdan y ser a'r gofod a just fatha y galaxies a pethau. Dwi'n cofio pan o'n i'n blentyn, oedd dad yn mynd â fi i weld fatha stargazer, a oedd o bod tro'n enwi'r constellations gwahanol i fi. A wedyn rhyw ddwrnod, o'n i just yn arbrofi. Dyna be oedd 2020 lot o arbrofi efo technegau gwahanol. A felly mae hwn hefyd i weld yn Gwyl y Ferch tro yma. Mae o ddarn reit fach a 5, ond dwi'n meddwl mae o yn hollol wahanol i unrhyw waith dwi wedi gwneud o blaen eto. So dyna di hwnna. A y darn mwy o diweddar nes i greu eto oedd yr acrylic pour yma ar y canfas. Dwi jyst wrth y modd efo'r lliwiau yn hwn, sut mae gyd yn llifo i fewn i llall, a unwaith eto nes i mwynhau y broses o greu mwy na be oedd yn edrych fel ar y diwedd. Dwi'n meddwl dyna'r oll sgynna fi. A dwi mor ddiolchgar i Gwyl y Ferch rili am cael y cyfle yma i arddangos yn waith. Mae wedi reid lot o hyder i mi. A dwi'n meddwl bod o just yn amazing bod yna fath menter yn bodoli yn cefnogi artistiaid ifanc, Cymraeg, merched yn general, a hefyd yn cefnogi achosion da hefyd. Dwi'n meddwl bod o just yn gret. Felly, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am wrando, a os oes gennych chi unrhyw gwestiynau. Diolch.
Gret, diolch yn fawr iawn i chdi, Eleri. Thank you, Eleri. O hwnna'n ddifyr iawn, a yn amlwg hefyd, fel chdi dweud, fod o'n di cychwyn 'di bod yn gychwyn da i chdi o ran dy yrfa mewn ffordd, bod chdi wedi cael da ddangos yn gyntaf efo Gwyl y Ferch. Mae hynny wedi bod yn gret. Dwi'n siŵr mae Esme'n cytuno fod o'n gret i glwad.
Bron a neud fi crio, Eleri.
Sorry.
So just to say that it was lovely to hear from Eleri that it was one of the first pieces that she showed with Gwyl y Ferch was one of the first time that she showed in general to the public sort of thing. So it's lovely. That's a really good thing to hear. And now she's in a, just the third time you tried, trydydd tro sydd wneud efo ni de. So mae'n gret, mae hwnna'n yn dangos ac yn ategu'r neges fod ni yma i cefnogi pobl, ddim just unwaith, fod ni yma i hir dymor Gwyl y Ferch a ni'n CARN, fod ni'n trio wneud ac yn trio helpu chi yn eich datblygiad chi proffesiynol ac rhoi y cyfleoedd yna. So it's just, this is the third time that Leri's shown through Gwyl y Ferch, and it's seeing her work develop and giving her that confidence, and that's exactly what Gwyl y Ferch is there for, is to give that platform, to give that support to certain people, and yeah, and what CARN do, and that's why we're really supportive of the whole thing. So eto, gret, diolch yn fawr iawn. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Os ydy rhywun efo unrhyw cwestiwn at hyn o, even if it's that you didn't understand what Eleri was saying necessarily, but you could see her work and you might have something to ask about it, please do so, either out loud or in the chat if you want. Anybody?
Eleri, when you, just am deud, oes just like about, when you create the pour paintings, do you have to thin the paints at all, or is it a specific type of acrylics?
You can buy them ready mixed, and that's what I did to begin with, just as an experiment. But you can pour like a pouring medium in, and all sorts of different. There's like different formulations you can have, and obviously that affects the outcome of the painting. But I just bought the pre-mixed stuff just to begin with, and then adding the silicone in to create all those cells. But yeah. Thank you.
Couple of comments, a question in the chat, Eleri, and there's a couple of comments and questions in the chat, so I'll just read them out. So mae Ruth yn deud am hardd, diolch Ruth. Alec di deud, cool stuff, I hope you're putting it in for the abstract show at Surface Gallery. A mae di roi link lawr wedyn, so maybe you should try for that. Mae Jen deud hoffi'r technegau yn Eleri, fab. Diolch Jen. Mae Ruth yn dweud, mae hi mor bwysig bod na ofod wedi cael ei greu yn arbrofi ferched achos bod ni'n sal yn rhoi'n gilydd ymlaen. Mae hynna wir iawn, wir iawn. So yeah, then there's a link to the abstract show that Alec was saying. Yeah, gwych. Dwi'n gwybod os mae rhywun arall efo rhywun arall rhywbeth i ddeud. I don't know if anybody else got anything else to say or ask before we move on. Neu can ni ddod nôl ar diwedd, we can come back at the end. No, beth arall, sorry. Car just yn deud, love the forehead painting, really captures the feeling of the place. That's very true. And what you were saying, Eleri, about that first picture is that it was something, it's a very special place, especially when it's a nice day, and it's something that all us locals anyways are very familiar with. We've had a pint or a drink.
Yeah, we love having a pint down there, don't we?
It's just beautiful, and you did capture it really, really, really pretty well, basically. So yeah, it's a really good example of a good, strong first submission, really, wasn't it? Esme? I remember vividly.
I fell in love with that painting when I saw it.
Yeah, you did.
When I remember opening it's one of my favorite things is when we get all of the artwork in and I get to take it out the bubble wrap. And when I get these massive paintings that appear in bubble wrap, it's like Christmas. I have so much fun getting them out and putting them in places and go, oh, look at this. And it's such a pleasure to watch people go from our first opportunity. And, you know, that first year we had a really great mixture of experienced artists to people who were exhibiting for their very first time. And it's been an absolute journey and honour to walk with people from 2019 to 2022 and seeing them develop and submit pieces that have are completely different to their original practice. You know, getting that little watercolor submitted, I looked at him and went, "Oh, look at this!" And I love space and the stars, and the same as you, Eleri. I used to go stargazing because I lived in sort of a dark sky area, and I have so much, Menna knows when I do the selection and the curating, I have so much fun, but it is just such a privilege to walk with people from that sort of early on as their first exhibition, and to seeing their practice develop and seeing their work in other exhibitions without us. It's just so humbling as a process.
And it definitely is one of the nicest bits, or the best bits, is that you get to open it. It is like Christmas, like you say. It's just getting to see them all and think, ooh, because obviously a picture or a photograph of a piece of work never justifies it. So when you get to see the actual piece, it's always a joy and a pleasure to get to then put it in practice. But I was going to say something else. Oh, Eleri, hefyd, nes i ddeud o reit ar y cychwyn, bod oeddech chi wedi cael oeddech chi'n rili'n licio cael neu ddim yn neud gymaint ohono fo, ond bod chdi wedi cael athrawes rili da, a mae hynna'n mor wir am gymaint o bobl. She was saying at the beginning that if it wasn't for one teacher, she might not be doing her art as she is, and thank God for that teacher, because it's often the case. You either get a really good, inspiring teacher, or sometimes they can be somebody very disencouraging, and they can then decide on which way you go and which path you follow. But yeah, kudos to that teacher, because obviously she's had a very good influence on you, and we're thankful for that. So da iawn chdi. A wedyn hefyd, mae angen y clod yna. So yeah, thank you. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Eleri.
Diolch.
Symud ymlaen at person nesa. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chdi, a diolch am dy amser. If anybody does have any further comments or questions about Eleri's work, we can ask them at the end of the session. So, ar gyfer y person dwysa, ond dim dwysa, ydy Jane. Mae Jane efo darn yma ni, ac eto mae Jane yn rhywun wedi arddangos ar rhan o CARN, ond eto trwy Gwyl y Ferch hefyd. So Jane is our last but not least. Jane has been someone that's been quite constant in the last couple of years with CARN, but also through Gwyl y Ferch. So I'm not going to say anything more.
Thank you, Menna. Well, dwi'n meddwl am siarad yn Saesneg. I'm going to speak in English, which is really my first language anyway. But Ruth here is my ex-Welsh teacher. Diolch yn fawr, Ruth, am ddod heno. And thank you, Gwyl y Ferch, for putting my piece of work in. That's really, really kind of you. And I was absolutely thrilled to have it picked. And, well, Menna is going to share my PowerPoint, because last night I had a meltdown. The whole thing crashed. So if you put on so Menna's going to put that up for me, just in case I go, crazy. Well, I have been creating my own artwork for a long time, but it's only over the last few years I've really focused in more on my own work. It's because I actually am a teacher as well. I'm hoping I can inspire people like you, Eleri. And I try to be enthusiastic, and it's great to see the younger artists and being full of fun and everything. So this is the piece that was that I put in, and really I do quite a lot of work on the figure. That is what I have been doing from way back, life figures, etc., etc. Although I've always thought, why is it the nude female? Although we've had a few nude male models. So I just do clothed models now. And I have had, if we go to the second slide, Menna, I've been doing quite a lot. I've got a friend of mine's daughter-in-law doing modeling for me. That's her down there in the bottom right. And I did loads of work. I wasn't really thinking about what the context of the figure was. And I had agony come every week all over the summer. just so I could get back into my life drawing work. And I like figures to be kind of not still, but in movement. And I was seeking around, I was scouting around for some kind of idea of how I was going to put my figures together and not just keep repeating the drawings and the paintings. And but anyway, then I came across a kind of a technique called breakdown printing. I've always liked printing. Painting is my thing really, but I do like printing. I like the process, and I like experimenting with stuff, new stuff. I always love doing that. So I went on a course with a friend. I met an old friend that I used to be, that I first knew when I was on foundation, and I won't tell you how many years ago it was, but we went on a course in November because we thought, oh, we've got to do something. And it was on this process of breakdown screen printing, mainly on fabric. And that on the right hand side, you can see those black lines. That isn't the screen for the picture on the left, but that's the kind of process. So you paint on this stuff onto the screen, and then as you print it, the image breaks down. So the picture on the left, that was my first effort at doing figures, and that was a cutout stencil. And then as I printed it, it broke down into more abstract shapes, and I did really like it. And I had some pictures. Did I have some pictures? Oh yes, I did. In CARN. CARN has been an amazing place for me to put in pieces of work. So big thank you to Menna for that. And then I thought, right, okay, so what am I going to do next? So I carried on with this breakdown figures thing, and I used the life drawings that I'd been doing of Agni, and I put those into different ideas. So the next piece slide will show us the picture that I've got up in the exhibition. It's the red and black, the one on the left. And so that is a breakdown screen. So you can see it's not like the best pattern repeat. Well, it wasn't really meant to be. It was, I had the pieces of fabric and the colors ready, and then I printed. So you might be able to see it's a repeat, and it goes across left to right all the way down. But that particular, the red and the black, didn't break down as much as I thought it was going to. But I was looking for a subject for this exhibition about women, about the cultures or the social aspects of women. I couldn't think what it was, but in the end I came up, because I love going on demonstrations and things like that. That's what I'm into it. And I looked up all the women's demonstrations on the internet, and this is the one I came up with. There was, I think it was in 2021, and there were worldwide demonstrations by women on equal rights. And so that is the theme behind, that is the inspiration. The image on the right, the blue, that I had already had that background, and then I printed, that was a slightly different, no, actually I think it's the same screen, but actually that, even though it looks okay there, it did wash out, because with this process you have to wash your fabrics out, and then they can fade if you haven't done it correctly in the first place. But I quite like that kind of watery, weird look to that one. But it's not as strong, I don't think, as the red and black. I do like that. And it's quite big, so I wasn't sure they were going to pick it, actually. The next slide shows you a little bit more about the process, because I thought you might might be just interesting to people to see. And it's how the screens worked. So on the right, no, this was my next set of work. So I'm doing a whole load of work now on this theme of equal rights and etc. And I've used, if you look at the bottom of this slide, you'll see some of the small paintings that I've also done. And they were quick, small paintings. I used to do those quite a lot, a long time ago. And so that was going back to that. So those paintings, those figures of agony were what I used in my next sets of work. And then in the background of the photo, you can see there's a piece of work. Actually, I haven't worked into it yet. Those long pieces, they're not, I don't know what I'm going to do with those yet. I'm going to do some, maybe write, I don't know. I like using text quite a lot as well in my work. I haven't got any in these pieces, but I think I will. And then I've also got a red piece of fabric hanging up there with a really nice design. And I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. But the red figures on that dark background, the bitty one, kind of abstract. You'd like doing that, Larry, because you'd enjoy all the abstract marks that you can do. It's kind of crushed up fabric and then you screen print on it and you get all that crazy effect. It's really good. And then I put my figures on top. So the figures, they were just cut out of sticky back plastic and then printed on. So the next slide is the red figures. These are my demonstration figures again. And I just picked out two out of the 4. So the breakdown effect, you can see it a little bit more in the bottom right. Those figures have become really smudgy. And I've got linen as a fabric, so it's giving it a really nice texture. So yeah, I like those. I think they've worked quite well. They're really they are bit really red in real life. The photos don't quite do it justice. The next set of the next pair are the same. So it's the same stencil. So I did the red ones, but then I did it in reverse, if you get me. And that fabric there had been printed on first of all. And then I worked into it because I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I don't usually do things in brown. I don't know why. But on the left, it looks really black. But then when it was washed out, it came out the kind of brown. But I like that kind of, you know, the mark making thing. I do, yeah, they do. They have created an interesting effect, those have. And I'm really pleased with them. The next slide is of the same, it's the same image again, but it's on a different background. And I wasn't sure about putting these in because they're really hard to see. If you saw it in real life, it doesn't look as, it is clearer. So this bottom left image, you can see how the figures have been broken down through the process again. And, you know, you've got that crushed background, again, orange. And I thought I will try different colour schemes. And what is it? So that's the end of my slides. And I'm now thinking, because they're all experiments and I haven't cut any of them up yet or anything, I am now going to work, you know, in my spare time. I like the way Menna said how busy people are. You know, I find it hard. I need to spend more time on considered just producing work, because if you keep going back to work, then you go to a different job. And then you've got another workshop going on. And then I've got things, and I find that it hard to maintain a kind of continuum with some of the ideas I've got. But the next lot of work I'm doing on figures, I took a load of photos. I went to a demonstration with Ruth, and it was on Nid yw Cymru ar werth, Wales is not for sale. So that is where I'll go next with my figures. I took quite a few pictures and then that's going to go with another lot of work that I've got on Nid Yw Cymru Arwerth. Even though they kind of don't go, they sort of do. So yeah, that's it. I'm just in the middle of that like group of work, and I'll see what will I do next. It's having time to do it. So, but that's it at the moment. Dwi'n siŵr os oes yna cwestiynau, if anybody would like questions. But yeah, and thank you, Esme. It's been a pleasure to, you know, like meet people now. I live in mid Wales, between Dolgellau and Machynlleth and Tywyn. So I'm always just that. I'm in Gwynedd, but like I say, I'm on the frontier. And so
you're on the fringes of us, aren't you, Jane?
Going up to Carnarvon is great, but it's just that little bit of time. But where we live, because I'm also in the Aberystwyth printmakers, and a bit nearer to Aberystwyth, but it's not got the same. It is a printmakers group, if you know what I mean, not a general kind of art group. Which I find more.
If we had enough people, we would tour the whole thing around the country.
In the future, you'll get there.
Yeah.
Fab. Na, diolch yn fawr iawn, Jen. Mae'n gret I glywed diweddariad chdi a gweld lle ti arni efo dy waith. Eto, ti'n berson da ni wedi gweld yn datblygu a datblygu dy syniadau beth bynnag dros y blynyddoedd dwytha. So I was just saying, thank you, Jane. Thank you for interesting. Sorry, my dog's here. I'm not just looking down randomly. It's just great to see Jane's development and hear what her latest project is about and stuff. Because yeah, you're fairly new to CARN. I'm very new to Gwyl y Ferch, but it's all great to see and to be able to support and hear that development and stuff. So it's great. So I don't know if anybody has some questions or any comments?
There are a couple of questions in the chat, Menna.
Yeah. Do you want to read them or shall I?
Yeah.
So okay, workshops. I'll tell you what it was, Eleri. It was, hey, I might do some workshops. I do workshops, you know, crew celf a pethau fel 'na. And I'm always saying I'm going to do workshops and things, and then it's just getting time. But the thing is, I went to this. It's called Urban Studios in Salford, and you could look her up. But anyway, no, sorry, Urban Studio North, Larry. Put the North in after, and she is a textile person, so it's more just they do quilts and things like that. But it is a very good place to go. And although it's not that far really, but I am building up. I bought the stuff from her because I'm going to do some more things myself. I've got a studio in Bryn Craig near Tywyn. So artists that inspire my practice. Oh yeah. I'll have to. Hey, I'm not going to mention any great white males. That's what I say to my friends, the great white males. Sorry, oh no, he's left. What's his name?
Could I ask a question, Jane? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not an artist. I am obviously connected to Evelyn, she's my daughter. So I have.
You look alike, don't you? You do.
I have a huge interest in art, and I've since Eve's taken it up, I actually have enjoyed so much looking at different forms of art. But one of the things that I have dabbled in previous years is interior design and colour and how colour is used. And what I actually find fascinating, particularly with your first piece that you've shown us, the global demonstration of, you know, the women's rights, was that red is something that I immediately normally associate with anger or antagonism, you know. But your piece immediately spoke of a strong power rather than an antagonistic power. You know, it was so much stronger and in contrast to the blue. The blue just didn't have the message in the same way. I know it's maybe it's obvious to everybody else, but for me it was really, really strong. And I'm coming up to see the exhibition on Saturday, so I'll be very interested to see it for real. But thank you, I've really enjoyed it.
No, thanks. Well, you know, I think it's like Eleri said, God, I mean, I should plan out my stuff. You know, when you're teaching, you got to do this, and you got to have it all in this sequence and everything like that. But it is quite nice sometimes just experimenting with colour. And that background I'd had from a previous workshop that I'd done there. And I was trying to think what I was going to do with it. But it was a lovely red and orange yellowy mix underneath that dark colour. And it just worked. But some of the things you do, of course, they don't work. So, you know, you can do a load of things if you do them quite quickly without, you know, and you think afterwards, oh yeah, that wasn't much good. And that was the blue one. Right. Because I asked my friend Ruth, I sent her pictures and I go, oh yeah, what do you think of this blue one? Or what do you think of that red one? And she goes, the red. Yeah. Put the red in. But anyway, I couldn't put the blue because it had faded.
But the contrast, contrast seeing it tonight it's
like on fire, isn't it? It's like people, powerful. Women on fire.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so reminiscent to me when I looked at it. It's, you know, obviously we've been through all of the Black Lives Matter protests, women's rights protests, the spiking protests. That it was so reminiscent to me of some of those photos that have been captured over the past few years, with the fire in the background, the explosions, everything. I think it was a fascinating colour choice, even if it wasn't, as you say, maybe deliberate from the outset.
Yeah. And the other picture, the other ones, you know, the red figures on the grey and that, actually, that has faded a bit. That wasn't as good as when I'd actually printed it. And it was the same with the other one with the black that's now gone to brown. So I'll just have to see. I'm not that, there's certain colours I'm not crazy, you know, but then I thought, no, I've got to experiment with some different colours, because the first set, they would look very pale and a bit wishy-washy, but then I don't know. You never know, do you?
No, well, that's the beauty of experimenting, isn't it, Jane? And especially when it comes to the colour and with materials and stuff, it is all about experimenting and having that time to play in a way and seeing what works. Yeah.
And people, you know, people standing up for everything. I did something the other day. I did this, I got this old daffodil screen print thing, like on a screen. And then I did, you know, the Ukraine flag colours. And it was funny at work today, and I just put it on Facebook. And today, quite a few people at work said, oh, Jane, oh, I really look, you know, I said, oh, I'll give it to you, because it's just of now, isn't it? It's good to try and think of things in your art to express, you know, what's going on out there, especially with demonstrations. We won't be allowed to do any soon. But we'll carry on.
I think it's quite interesting, Jane, that you say about like not wanting to use the brown or not being attracted to it as much. But actually, I got a real sense of feeling of, that's why I kind of asked about like the artists that might influence you a little bit more with your practice. But actually, they felt like a real sort of like industrial feeling, like sort of how that, it sort of reminded me of muddy puddles. Like I never think of protests as very clean things. It's in like come rain or shine, and there's like this rust factor. I think it was in the very end slide you put in there, but there's like this real sort of a really good rawness, and I think that there was quite a nice mix. Potentially could be read as industrial or quite raw, but actually I really like the brown.
Oh,
I think it works great.
No, it's good to get feedback, because I have a few friends, you know, that I talk to about my stuff, but not many. And so it's good to have a forum to know, you know, to get a bit of, you know, just a few ideas. So yeah, oh yeah, industrial. I like the idea of that. Graffiti kind of meets something. I'll have to think.
Yeah, like I think kind of like, you know, that kind of imagery, it just made me think of like, you know, placards being thrown down and that sort of thing, and like really, I was about to say a dirty protest, but that's not what I meant. I meant rust and mud and that kind of dirt. But like that kind of really like raw edge, yeah.
Because it's hard to think of things to actually express your ideas about demonstrations, isn't it, after the event, if you know what I mean? Because I was going to do some placards and that. Well, I did some little houses for Nid yw Cymru Arwerth, and I'm still working on that as well in my spare time.
In your spare time, yeah.
It'll happen. Ond diolch yn fawr iawn pawb.
Diolch i chdi,
you.
Jay.
Sorry, Menna, just to answer Car's question in the chat, I believe the piece is about 70 by 70 centimetres.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Just so that doesn't go unanswered.
No, thank you. I was just about to check it, but yeah, thank you. You beat me to it. Yeah, so dwi'n gwybod os mae rhywun arall efo rhywbeth arall I ofyn neu ddeud. Anybody's got anything else to say or want to ask? Ruth?
Yeah, gai just ddeud, da ni di bod yn sôn am liwio. We've been talking about colours, and you know, we're talking about the orangey red being powerful and how it contrasted with the blue, and Eleri's, I think, is the second painting that she showed that had the orangey red on one side, and then on the other side I think she had green and blue, and I really like that. I like the contrast, and I just loved the way that she said she didn't really know when she was painting that, so be oedd hi'n neud, you know, where it was coming from, and what she was doing. And I wanted to ask, was she still pregnant while she was creating that painting, or was it before or just after?
Yeah, I was, it was just at the start of the pandemic, really, and I was in the early stages of pregnancy then, and actually thinking back at it now, it was quite a turbulent time because I had to go in and out of hospital a lot. So thinking back at it and looking at it now, it makes sense.
Yes,
really.
yes, yes. I was thinking, there's probably some stuff coming out, and I like that sort of, it's like this contrast sort of coming together, and maybe a little bit of some conflict there, and then I also thought, in a way, the pandemic was like that, because you had the darker bits, people locked down and despair and that, and then you had that feeling of people looking after each other and sort of the fight for life, and you could see the dark and the light there. And I don't paint myself, but I do write, and I find a lot of inspiration from looking at people's artwork and just particularly listening really to what women say. And I think the forums that we've got to discuss our views and ideas. Sorry, I've got a dog as well. Blue, stop here. We haven't got sufficient forums for us to be able to communicate, and more than anything to just encourage each other's interest in expressing ourselves, So dwi really di mwynhau gwaith pawb heno. You know, diolch yn fawr. I've really enjoyed everybody's work tonight. So thanks for that. There's a few poems going around already, you know.
Well, submit some to us next year, please, Ruth. Next anthology, I expect to see your name.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr. Mi na.
Yeah.
Thank you, I will.
Diolch, Ruth. Geiriau annwyl iawn, very kind words, and yeah. Dyna pan mae Gwyl y Ferch yn bwysig iawn I gael y fforwm yna, I gael y platform yna. That is exactly why Gwyl y Ferch is that important. It is to give that platform and to give that forum, and that's why else we wanted to do these talks, as well as having the platform to put an exhibition and to have the anthology and try to do other things. It's also to have that opportunity for you to talk with peers, to have opportunities to discuss ideas, like you were saying earlier, Jane, and obviously Elerie's had some ideas tonight as well. And also just because that's it's just important to talk about these things, and like we were saying to Eve earlier, like the things that you're talking about that most people try to avoid or try to be silent about. It's, you know, they're all very, very important stuff that we should be talking about and being there for each other and encouraging each other. So yeah, sorry, my dog's getting very excited. Diolch yn fawr iawn I pawb. Mae 'di bod yn lovely gwrando arnoch chi. It's been lovely to listen to you and to be part of the conversation. So just I ddeud hefyd, fatha, mae 'na sgwrs bob nos Fercher hyd at ddiwedd yr arddangosfa. So mae 'na un wsos nesa efo Sarah Holyfield sydd yma efo ni hen yma, ond hefyd mae Mary Rose Pritchard, Van de Gana a Rachel Harris yn rhan o hwnna. So just to say that we've got a talk every Wednesday until the duration of the exhibition. So there'll be next Wednesday on the 9th and the following on the 16th. So next Wednesday for Sarah Holyfield, who happens to be with us tonight, Mary Rose Pritchard, Wanda Garner and Rachel Harris. So next week we've got 4, so that'll be at 7 o'clock again. Those are available now to register for. But as Esme said, there's a couple of other events that will be also getting that also is happening to contribute to Gwyl y Ferch and to celebrate Women's International Day, basically, and to celebrate women. So that one of them is the film night next Tuesday, isn't it, on the 8th itself?
Yes. So it's 8th of March, Tuesday, on International Women's Day. Tickets are available through Pontio. It'll be shown at Pontio Bangor. It's super exciting. Fionn, my co-director, has pulled out all the stops this year. We actually are the premiere screening for an Oscar-nominated film by Joanna Quinn, which is incredibly exciting. We also have 2 or 3 other films that are BAFTA nominated. So they're all short films. And we've got some brand new rising stars as well. It's £3 for a ticket, and all of the funding goes to either a women's charity or to fund our future events. I think the entire evening will be about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and there's a couple of panels, a little bit like what we've done tonight, where a couple of the filmmakers are actually going to discuss their work to break up the evening. It's incredibly exciting. We've never done anything like this before in this scale. So
it's just another stage, another development, Gwyl y Ferch, which is truly deserved. So yeah, and then there will be some sort of poetry / open mic event towards the end.
Yeah, I think the idea is a sort of reading of poetry, primarily from the writers who have submitted to our anthology this year. But it's an open invite, really, so an open platform. I think we're just still narrowing down a date because we've been hard to pin each other down at this point.
Going back to that whole thing, we're all too busy, unfortunately, to be adding more to our books, but we all want to do it and want to do it for everybody else as well. So yeah, I'm not going to moido too much more, but thank you very much, everyone. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd hyn yma. Thank you for your time, artists. Thank you for your time, audience, and to everyone for participating. It really does mean a lot, and it's great for everybody to be so supportive of one another, and thank you. So yeah, diolch yn fawr iawn pawb. Diolch I chi gyd o'r artistiaid. Diolch I bawb am rando ac am gymryd rhan. Mae o'n meddwl lot iddyn ni gyd, a mae o'n werth chweil. So yeah, without further ado, diolch yn fawr iawn. Nos da. Thank you, everyone.